Hey there. It feels like years ago at this point, but back in March, Donald Trump suggested that it was time for the United States to get out of Syria. The entire US government and a whole bunch of US media teamed up to change his mind. This is a shame because it is time to get out of Syria. This simple truth is illustrated by the US's two greatest foreign policy failures, the wars in Vietnam and Iraq. On a first look, our approach to Syria doesn't look anything like Iraq or Vietnam, but I would argue that that's because we don't remember those conflicts correctly. For most people, the big mistake in Iraq was Bush's invasion in 2003. And for those who remember, the big mistake in Vietnam was President Johnson's massive escalation after 1964. Very few are suggesting anything like that for Syria. Actually, let me correct that. Very few people are suggesting anything like that for Syria so far. People pay a lot less attention to the decisions that led up to 2003 and 1964. The baby boomers have put John F. Kennedy up on a pedestal, and Washington, D.C. really likes to see the first Gulf War in 1991 as a victory. Both of these myths, and they are myths, hide the truth. We were deeply involved in both of these countries long before the big disaster years. We had set traps for ourselves. Now, I don't want to defend George W. Bush or LBJ. Both of these men lied to create pointless wars with multi-million person body counts. But their terrible decisions were a logical progression from bad decisions that had already been made. The US government had set traps for itself. The situations in these countries were almost completely of our own making. All of this garbage was justified somehow with the pursuit for credibility among our allies and opponents. The first Bush's Gulf War never ended. In the 1980s, we worked with our Arab allies to create Saddam Hussein's war machine to fight Iran. When Saddam went rogue, the first Bush got to throw his Gulf War party in 1991. The Iraqi occupation started back then. Not in 2003. There were no-fly zones and brutal sanctions throughout the 1990s. Clinton bombed the country repeatedly and inaugurated an official policy of regime change in 1998. Bush's actual invasion of Iraq in 2003 was just a continuation of the same policy. The U.S. involvement in Vietnam dated back to the 1950s. We funded the last years of France's failed and brutal attempt to hold on to that country. Our CIA was on the ground throughout this period. The first U.S. soldiers arrived in 1955 under Eisenhower. Kennedy dramatically expanded the war. We held on to the fiction that our troops were just advisors and not really involved in combat. We can see that fiction in Syria today as well. The advisor myth ended under LBJ when our troop levels went up to over 500,000 U.S. soldiers. Both of these terrible decisions were taken in the context of a world that the United States led, debatably in 1964, but indisputably by 2003. Our parents and grandparents had built a world system that was so effective that even today, after all of our squandered opportunities, it endures. Can you imagine how much stronger it would have been if we hadn't gone into Iraq? The survival of the U.S.-led system is a much more open question in 2018 than it was in 1964 or 2003. What the U.S. government is proposing in Syria today isn't the same as a 1964 or a 2003. It's more of a 1955 or a 1998. So we're just going to keep our 2,000 troops there until ISIS is defeated, Assad has resigned, and Iran no longer has any regional influence at all. In other words, Washington, D.C. is going to keep our troops there forever. Once again, it's all about credibility, whatever that means. The U.S. government wants to set another trap for itself, to put things in place that make a Syrian 1964 or 2003 inevitable. Whether it's 5 years from now or 10 years from now, some foreign policy genius will decide that an invasion is the only logical way to solve this problem we created. But we can no longer afford this. I still believe, like Abraham Lincoln, that the United States can be the last best hope for this planet. Even today, all over the world, you can find people who believe that we can do better than we have done this past 17 years. And that's what we should be focusing on with our time left on top. We should be working to convince people that the world system built by our parents and grandparents is worthwhile. Outside of the countries and regions sacrificed to our various complexes, that system has in fact done a great deal of good. We should be working to strengthen that system so that all of the world's rising actors can benefit from it, and so that the system shifts from an American-led system to one that provides ever-growing prosperity to all, from here to the stars. This is still very possible. We can still salvage the respect of the world. The first step towards doing that would be getting out of Syria. If we don't get out of Syria, there's a very good chance that history will repeat itself and we'll end up with another decades-long catastrophe. Except in the coming decades, we won't be facing off against a small or fading power like Iran or the Soviet Union. We'll be facing off against China, which is the topic of our next video. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. And if you'd like a free essay on a completely different topic, I suggest you sign up for my email newsletter. Thanks.